Welcome to the Power of Design podcast, where we have inspiring conversations that explore the intersection of architecture, construction, and real estate, so we can understand the dynamics and trends that shape an exciting and powerful built environment. This is your host, Jack Osa. In today's episode of the Power of Design podcast, I'm talking to Clayton Sealey. Clayton is a creative thinker, marketer, and designer who organically grew an Instagram account to more than 12,000 followers, covering urban design and development in Charlotte, North Carolina. Clayton combines his experience, sensibility for the built environment, and digital marketing expertise in order to bring value and contribute to his community. This is my conversation with Clayton. Clayton, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. Clayton, so you have grown this CLT development Instagram account to more than 12,000 followers, posting about design, construction, and projects in Charlotte, North Carolina. Why do you think it's important for people to pay attention to the built environment?
Well, I think that the built environment is everything that's around us and everything that's within us. Basically, the things that we do every day are kind of dictated by how we interact with everything around us. Where we go, where we come, where we eat, where we drink, where we entertain ourselves, where we work, where we educate ourselves. It's all based on the built environment. It's one of the most important things we have. As long as we respect the built environment and enhance the built environment, it enhances us.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that if you're not in the design world or construction, or you don't pay attention to that, there are many people that they don't realize is there. You know, yeah. It's like a fish in water.
Yeah.
If you don't think about it, you don't know it's there.
It's one of those things that you can easily take for granted because it's built by someone else. Most people don't have the opportunity to actually create things, but we do as designers, as architects. We get to actually create what's around us. And people might take for granted a little bit at a time, but as long as they start looking for things and seeing how they interact with everything, the built environment is incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing with your, digital media and emphasizing the built environment is helping people understand, what that is, gain appreciation for it, and become advocates to create a better environment, because you have basically two environments, the interior and the exterior environment. The urban environment where there is no owner of it, might be the city or whoever jurisdiction is in charge of that. And then the interior environment is a little bit more controlled because you have some you have clients, you have people that are investing and they pay attention to that. But the exterior environment and urban spaces are the ones that I think are not very taken care of.
Mm-hmm. When I first started CLT development, and even before that, when I first started writing for Charlotte 5 and Charlotte Agenda, Charlotte Magazine, I was really focusing on the buildings themselves. But as this has kind of progressed, I've started focusing as much about what's inside, what's outside, but what connects. So whether that be parks or transit, open space. It's funny getting into this. I really wanted to talk about buildings, but I find myself always trying to figure out how to enhance what's around them.
Yeah.
Because when you weave together an environment, that's when you have a city.
Yeah.
You look at somewhere like Dubai, where it has beautiful, giant skyscrapers, but it never really has a sense of place. I think they've started to address that. But when you create an urban environment that looks more like a shopping mall, it doesn't really speak to people. It doesn't encourage them to walk. It doesn't encourage them to leave their homes. It's wonderful to walk down a city street and see, 50 storefronts and people interacting with them, with awnings and signage and texture and art. Those kind of things are good for your health. They inspire you to pay attention to what's around you and look for great things and beauty in life that just aren't there without the built environment.
Sure. And that the idea that I love is when we think about the built environment, as the space in between the built environment, right? So a city is the space in between the buildings and that ground surface that it's available for people to walk over. But that empty space is what we really enjoy. So the definition of architecture and urban planning as a negative space to me is what's very interesting to understand how humans interact with that space, because sometimes we focus on the aesthetics of the building, which I like that, and it's important because it's a physical object and it can be beautiful and nice. But sculpture or art that you look at is the same. You appreciate aesthetic values from outside, but you don't experience it. And that's where I think the power of not only the built environment, but the power of design starts becoming very relevant in the way we interact with our spaces.
Yeah, and I think interactivity is super important. When Hudson Yards was finished in New York, my wife and I took a walk, and we, you marvel at the architecture, but then you are kind of taken aback by the fact that, on the granular level, we can't interact with most of it.
Right.
Architecture needs to be about the whole. It needs to be about how all of society can interact with the building and respect its form, its function, and actually, take something away from it. And I think, as I've started to learn more and more about this stuff, that's what I've become more passionate about, is programming as much as architecture. Because I think they go hand in hand, and sometimes they are disconnected.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure they stay connected all the time.
Yeah. Did you read about a couple of weeks ago about the vessel that they had to close it because of about 3 suicides?
No.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
About 3 people committed suicide, and they have to close it.
Jeez.
So imagine the power of the built environment, that I don't know why or how, but people go there to kill themselves.
There's
Isn't
been a
that
big
amazing?
problem with that here in parking decks.
Yeah.
I can't believe at the vessel. That's
Yeah.
so public facing.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, Clayton, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Charlotte. I'm one of those, I guess people like to call themselves unicorns, but I know quite a few people that grew up in Charlotte. My journey, so from, birth till I was 18, I lived in Charlotte, and then I moved to Savannah, Georgia. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design with the idea that I wanted to be an architect.
Interesting.
I decided I was too punk rock for architecture about a quarter
We need
in.
punk rockers.
I know. I wish I had realized that. And I ended up in advertising instead. I liked the idea of instantaneous gratification. The one thing about architecture is you're in for the long haul.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really patient for that at the beginning. In high school, I apprenticed for an architect. I helped out doing custom home design. I learned a lot. I drew a lot. There's homes in Charlotte that actually, have my creative stamp on it from when I was 16.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So, and those things went in my portfolio when I went to architecture school. But for some reason, branding just sucked me in.
Sure.
And then after SCAD, I met my wife at SCAD, and we moved to New York. And we lived in Charlotte for a year. I worked for an ad agency here. And then we saved up money, and we went to New York, and we struggled for a while. I baked bread at a bakery. She actually managed a different bakery. We moved right at when the recession started. So we kind of bounced around. I would freelance during the day and then work at a bakery at night, freelance bakery, and then probably working 80 hours a week, maybe 90.
Nice.
Yeah. And I kind of worked in tons of different places, got tons of different experience. I've worked in publishing, advertising. I've worked in apparel design. I've worked in experiential advertising. And nowadays, now that we're back in North Carolina, I almost said New York. Yeah. We moved back in May. So
Nice.
we started coming back here in April or May when the pandemic hit, just to get out of New York. And then finally we were like, let's just stay.
Yeah. So before New York, you had not lived in a major city like that before, right?
No. I had traveled plenty
Yeah.
to major cities, but that was definitely going from Charlotte to Savannah, back to Charlotte, and then New York. Definitely a little crazy.
Sure. So tell me about your experience of the city of New York. I will think based on your story that as you started, taking the subway and going places and walking, you started like gaining an appreciation for that experience.
Honestly, my appreciation for cities actually doesn't come from New York. It comes from my trips to China when I was 16. When I was 16, I was part of a ambassador program for like a music program with the Beijing Children's Orchestra. And my high school, I went to Charlotte Latin. And we spent a lot of time in Beijing and Shanghai, Xi'an, and actually seeing without my parents kind of.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky. I had a chaperone that was 25. So he didn't really play by the rules.
Good.
So we went and checked out all the spots that, the school would probably be horrified to hear
Sure.
that we went to. And that's kind of was my entry into it. And when I was
Interesting.
maybe 11, my family, we spent 3 weeks in London. So like in Paris as well, and had the real opportunity to see some of the biggest cities in the world.
Yeah.
And that includes New York.
Sure.
So when we landed in New York, I thought I had it figured out.
Yeah.
I did not. I definitely did not. We scraped and we barely made it there. The make it there, you can make it anywhere thing. I think we had $200 left. And we were about just done. And then things started working there. But New York, you get out, basically, we started looking at apartments. And we would just go out, get on the subway, get lost, eventually find the apartment. And you just keep trying and keep getting lost. And eventually you're just like, wow, wait, this all makes so much sense.
Sure.
Because it's done by designers.
And by logic. Like when you look at the subway system and, the maps, the fonts, how they do
the
it, that's a
Helvetica
masterpiece
everywhere.
of graphic design.
Yeah.
And they take complexity and make it simple that anybody can understand it. And if you take a while, you can say, okay, if I need to go there, I need to take, I don't know, maybe 5 different trains, but I know where to stop and how to get there.
Yeah. I used to try to find like, oh no, this way is going to be so much faster. And then I remember it was like 11 p.m. and that train was going, it wasn't going any further.
Yeah.
We didn't know. So we were just kind of looping underground. We went through like City Hall Station. We were on the 6, I think. And I was like, what is going on? Eventually we gave up where we were going and just went back to our hotel. That was when we first were starting to look.
Nice.
We were staying at a Holiday Inn in Soho. It was not Soho.
Use the name of the hotel.
Yeah.
Cool. So about 2 years ago, I took my kids. I have 3 kids. They're 12, 9, and 4. I took them to New York. My wife and I were like, man, they only know Charlotte. We have traveled a little bit, but let's show them New York City because that's the biggest city in the world and the most metropolitan city. And it was amazing. They loved it. We walk a lot. One of the things we noticed is their tennis shoes got dirty really fast.
Yeah.
Here, your tennis shoes are going to be very clean. And it was awesome. I mean, we were able to see, the main tourist attractions, architecture, buildings, Ground Zero, Hudson Yards. And, I was able to see, as a visitor, it's how impactful those projects are. Like, I know what it takes to do a project like that, and the amount of money and coordination and high design then somebody needs to put on to make that happen is mind blowing. It's amazing the scale of things that they're doing.
Yeah, it really is. And they also have to take everything into account. They have to take in what I would love to see one day is just a cross section from, bedrock to street. What exactly infrastructurally is under a skyscraper or is under a city street? Like, I think that would be a fascinating illustration.
Oh, sure.
With you got years of plumbing, you have sewers, probably 200 years of sewers.
Oh, yeah.
And wiring and subway trains and this and that. And it's so fascinating how logistic like how much of a logistic issue it would be to build a city.
Yeah, I've
that.
seen 3D models where people are building cities and they make sure every single piece is part of a 3D model. So the whole city is 3D model, all the way down to utilities underground, and you can easily see, track, and monitor every part and piece of the city.
Yeah, I remember seeing that with the most recent subway train that was built in New York. I can't remember which line it is right now, but the one that goes up the Upper East Side. I remember seeing the cross section of the street when they built that.
Yeah.
I guess that was the Q train extension up to
So
Upper
what
East
made
Side.
you come back to Charlotte?
Well, it was always part of the plan. We were planning on being in New York 10 years, be successful there. And we managed that. And I've always loved this city. And I always wanted to help it grow. Like, I wanted to help advocate for more urban practices. After I lived in Savannah, I got a feel for what it was like to live in a pedestrian-friendly town. Granted, Savannah doesn't have like grocery stores or anything, but you could walk everywhere.
Sure.
And then I came back to Charlotte and I wanted more for the city. It was 2007, I believe, and things were starting to get a little more urban. Right before I moved to New York, the light rail first opened. So I got to ride that, and I got to see, when you moved here 2001, right?
Yeah.
So did you ride the light rail the first day it opened?
Not the first day, but at least the first month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to actually just ride and see how much opportunity there was. And you could really envision in your head, like, this could go here, this could be like that could be like that. And now when you're here, you can see that it's happened. And the idea that, just small guys like you and me can actually create that and can be part of building a city.
Yeah.
New York, I couldn't do that.
Sure.
The city's already built.
Oh, yeah.
You got to have connections out the wazoo.
Yeah.
In Charlotte, I had some of those connections already. So it was always the plan to come back here. I started writing. I started CLT development for networking, for learning, for spreading ideas, for, general interactivity with people, because I wanted to learn from people in the industry. And then I wanted to disseminate that information to people that don't know as much. And so back to what you asked, why do we want to move back to Charlotte? Because it's a place where you can make a difference. You have a much better shot of making a difference. And if you know enough people and you know enough about the city, then you haven't made in that regards.
Sure.
And it's kind of a blank slate. We have made a ton of terrible urban development decisions over the past century at this point. But we've recognized that and we've started trying to fix that as we grow. And, it's kind of an exciting possibility just to be part of it.
We'll be right back with more from the Power of Design podcast.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
And I really like about your story that you came with that idea, with that intention, passion, and you were not waiting on somebody to give you a job or to tell you what to do or raise your hand to see if somebody pick you. You just leverage technology and your phone and whatever you have on your hand to make things happen. Talk to me about technology, digital marketing, digital media. How do you use the tool? How do you leverage that to make things happen? Because I will think that's your most important asset at this point, to be recognized and to keep going doing what you're doing.
Well, I think the most important thing about digital marketing and social media is establishing a personality, a voice. You don't want to be seen as a business. You want to be seen as a person. So I think humanizing yourself and being very, specific, very intentional, I guess is the word that I want in the information you give, but then having a little bit of fun. You always have to have fun. I mean,
Sure.
life is meaningless without some fun, without some snark, without some sarcasm. So I think digital marketing is just really about being yourself and then making good content, making sure you're up to date on everything. I have learned, like this year, I've taught myself animation, 3D design, web development. It's a constant learning process. So if you quit pivoting, you just get left behind.
Yeah.
So you always just got to pivot, learn, and be friendly, network all the time, and leverage as many people as you can. Make as many powerful friends as you can, and leverage them as much as possible, and have them leverage you and work together, symbiotically.
Yeah, I like the idea that technology, which is is part of a machine. There these things happening inside a box that there's no human participation, but there is a point where technology makes you more human and amplify your humanity. As you said, because now we can use these tools to help us amplify the message, to connect with a lot more people that before we didn't have the ability to do that. And the fact that it's free, that is mind-blowing. Sometimes we don't realize the power we have in our hands, with our phones. For free, you can say whatever you want, you can teach anything you want, you can reach as many people as you want, as long as you have an intention and a plan to make that happen.
You know what's interesting? I would say that the single thing that has contributed to CLT's development success this year, as far as growth goes, was the pandemic. Because I started this platform from New York. And, it was always a little tough to get your foot in the door with certain companies because they would be like, hey, let's meet in person. And I'd be like, oh, sorry, I live in Brooklyn. When the pandemic hit and Zoom became so prevalent, I was able to get, I was able to participate in networking events and even lead networking events, do podcasts, Zoom with people that I never would have had the opportunity to meet up with. And then creating more and more and more relationships, engaging with more people. That's how I met Tim Miner from Charlotte is Creative. That's how I met Tony Messia from The Ledger. That's how I met tons of people. And that kind of engagement really helped out. And that's just technology working in your, in your favor.
Yeah, it's allowing more human connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though there's so much less at the same time.
Yeah.
But I've been able to, parlay that into some face-to-face. And when we moved back, I was able to have the connections in place to tour office buildings as they're under construction and tell stories and walk in what will be a park and, get to know what is there and what will be there, the is, the was, the will be about different spaces. And it's been really cool.
That's awesome. What do you think are the talents and skills and unique set of ideas that you have that allow you to do that? Because, not everybody takes that path or has that ability to, just leverage social media to spread these ideas, which are really good ideas. They're very unique. Not everybody think about that. What do you think about you makes you good at doing that?
I think it's just 12 years of having to figure it out. I've never said no to anything, pretty much ever. And if I don't know how to do something, I'll just learn it. And I think that kind of pivoting, as long as you stay flexible, you can learn so much and you can, just keep reading, keep researching, watch YouTube, listen to podcasts. I listen to probably 9 hours of podcasts a day.
Oh, yeah.
Just while I work. And I suck in what I learn, and then I work at the same time, and the ability to multitask is definitely great. But really, the ideas that I get come from driving and walking and looking and listening and smelling and seeing and tasting. A city is meant to be actually, taken in with all of the senses. So just walking and enjoying, you learn so much. You learn what is wrong, what is right, what could be better, what could be, I guess it can't be worse, but I mean, I just like interacting with everything around me and talking to people and learning. I mean, it's so much of this is just face-to-face time and talking to people and seeing what they like and what they think what they would love to happen in their built environment.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think we're living in a very exciting time, having access to the technology, to learning tools like you mentioned. If you have access to YouTube, podcasting, and Google, there is no excuse not to do anything. You can learn anything you want. And you get the worldwide experts in any topic for free. You can get classes, lessons, white papers. So I think there's going to be a huge breakthrough and change in the education world because you can learn that for free. It's just a matter of, standardizing or a curriculum or something, and you don't get a paper to tell you that you have that diploma, but you can have the information. That's all you need.
Yeah, I mean, and really being able to back up what you know is more important than a diploma if you can get in front of the right people.
Oh, yeah.
If you can talk and you can network.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can skip a whole lot of the process.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to go back to school, especially for urban planning. But sometimes I'm like, maybe there's another way.
Oh, sure.
And I think there is.
I
think there's another way for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is the role and responsibility of an architect and urban planning in our society?
Well, I think the role is just, if you think about outdoor space and you think about buildings, it's about health. It's about wellness. Designing for people to have recreation time, designing for people to be able to be educated, and having great places to live, and for everybody. I mean, architecture is really so humanistic, like in concept. Everything around us is architecture. And building something that's beautiful and functional is essential. And I think that without architecture, really, if you think about it, the fundamental reason that we're, we live a long time, we have friendships, we have social like mechanisms is because of architecture, because we built, structures around us where we could collaborate, where we could keep our food from going bad, where we could keep ourselves, protected. Architecture is the fundamental reason why we are humans.
Sure.
So it's kind of like, what's the role? The role is the world is architecture. It's all architecture. And it fascinates me.
Yeah, so I make one distinction between architecture and, let's say, construction. Mm-hmm. And you can see, for example, when you go to, any home built by a home developer, mm-hmm. that they go and they build 3,000 homes. No architect designed that.
Yeah, that's true.
That is that house is the result of a mathematical formula to make money and to be extremely efficient and inexpensive to build that place. Mm-hmm. And that's where you end up with, 3 dining rooms, gigantic spaces, no closets, like things that they don't even take into consideration how a family lives. Mm-hmm. And we have so much of that. Mm-hmm. They're just buildings that they can be designed because, probably a licensed engineer or somebody signed and sealed some plans, but there was not thought behind it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's where the built environment pays a big price. And when you build a structure, it's going to last for years, mm-hmm. 50, 100 years or more. So once you make those decisions, they're going to be there for a long time. And we, the people using the spaces, are the ones who pay for that. And sometimes people are so used to bad quality construction, and they think that's just what it is. And they don't know there is a much better way to experience not only the interior, but also the exterior environments.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's really about being very intentional with how you do everything. And creating, you always have to be thoughtful. Like you're saying, you have to think, when we redesigned my parents' kitchen in the mountains, I sat there and I sketched out, I drew lines on where I thought that circulation would go just for walking. I thought about where I would like to cook, where I would like to prep, where I would like to bake. I tried to keep, I think about your plans for Cunningham Recreation, where you kind of had everything built as though it were a home. The places to actually work, the places to actually relax, the place, actually to cook, just like in a house.
Right.
And, when I think of stuff like that, it's really about, you kind of compartmentalize, but without lines, without barriers. And you kind of have to reorganize space spatially, visually. And, that is all architecture. I don't want to give architecture too little credit, because yes, you're correct. Most of the houses that are built are not architecture.
Yeah.
But it's still probably one of the most important parts of us as humans.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah. How do you see the design and construction industry evolving into the future?
Well, I think that there has been, and one of these really big takeaways from the pandemic is we need to be more mindful of our environments and how we interact with one another. And I think that interaction, we're going to see a little bit of a pullback from like incredibly crammed spaces. And I think we're going to see a whole lot more outdoor space. I think we are being way more intentional than we used to be about plugging in outdoor spaces, public parks and things like that. I think that, how we create green space is going to be, look at Singapore and look at Seattle. Look at the kinds of green spaces that they're actually plugging straight into architecture. Architecture is starting to become organic. And I think that you're going to see more and more and more of that. I am a little fearful that we are becoming too efficient in some ways.
Yeah.
That it is going to pull back on architecture. You see this more and more, in the 90s, yes, it was postmodern architecture, and some of it was a little weird, but it had features, it had, what am I trying to say? It had character. And now we're just building glass boxes, and we need to have a little bit more to it. Yes, there's amazing things that can be done with glass boxes. And you can be very intentional and still create something amazing. But like you're saying, a lot of things are a mathematical formula.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. So I don't want it to die. I want there to still be great places that we're creating for people.
Sure. And I think what you said is key, is just we need to be intentional.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to be out there raising the flag, bringing the narrative about great design it's better life, is better environment. It makes a huge impact.
Yeah.
That's
it's bringing the outside in and the inside out and having it all work together cohesively.
Yeah. How does the power of design impact who you are and what you do?
I wake up in the morning and I think about design. When I cook dinner, my wife and I have a cooking Instagram as well. I have way too many Instagrams, and I think about design when I'm plating a dish. Design has a power over me as much as I have a power over design. And I don't know what I would do without it, without being left-brained. it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right brain and left brain, but which is something I think is unique and something everyone should be. But yeah, it's the power of design means everything to me.
Yeah, to me too, man.
Yeah.
Clayton, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming here. I'm very proud of you. I'm excited about what you're doing and what you will be doing, and I look forward to stay in touch.
Ditto.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Remember to rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Find out more about Jack and Osa Studio at osastudio.com and follow us on Instagram at The Power of Design Podcast. Thank you.